Rolf Aldag, the famous doped cyclist and current manager of ketone-loving Primož Roglič. He once confessed that professional cyclists used to end up in alcoholism after retirement, generating many problems in their families. Perhaps he was recalling the popular case of his teammate, the well-known coke addict and drunkard Jan Ullrich. But it's not the case if we take the example of David Millar, another popular doped-up cyclist who even became world champion against the clock, assisted by the marginal gains of Sir Dave Brailsford. And then he sold himself as one of the biggest hypocrites in history by denying doping in cycling in the post-Armstrong epocha. After selling hundreds of thousands of copies of his book in which he told how he doped like a pig, he tried to become the president of the Cyclists Union in 2018, but failed, as almost always, in front of the doped-up old geezer Gianni Bugno, a low-key, obscure guy, but at the same time much more credible than the Scottish liar. And then he remembered his youthful days in Bayonne, where he enjoyed the fame of being the best-known British cyclist of the moment, and where he got drunk and partied with models and women pursuing the bad life. And then the light bulb went off in his head. What if I fulfill my youthful dreams and become the new Gianni Versace? Not exactly in high fashion, but in cycling-related fashion. So he created this Chapter 3 brand with his partner Mikkel Rasmussen, not to be confused with the doped-up Danish chicken cyclist. The only epocha cyclist who stayed to live in Girona. He also designs bicycles of peculiar taste with his own brand, and claims that his goal is to end up designing horrible helmets for some World Tour team, and thus continue making a living from cycling, as if years of doping and commentating on races on British TV had not been enough. Alex Zulle, the popular cyclist who was visually impaired and at the same time was sponsored by an association that helped the blind, has been one of the riders who has not wanted to know anything about cycling after giving up a Tour de France that he was entitled to after the disqualification of Lance Armstrong. A clear indication that his doping continued after he was fingered in the arse in the Festina affair. So much so that after riding for teams as dirty as Jan Ullrich's Coast Bianchi or Tugboat Hamilton's Phonak, he decided to retire in 2004 and took up skiing or off-road racing, taking years to get back on a bike. This myopic nice guy, however, does not renounce his past as a doped cyclist, for it allowed him to buy 2 houses, one in a village in Alicante in Spain and the other in Zurich. And he got contacts with which to continue living on his name as a double Vuelta a España champion. And today, he is more than happy at 56 years of age. He currently works as a freelancer in an agency for sports people, helping them to manage the huge amounts of money they earn so that they can invest it sensibly in land or real estate, and not in boats and bling and hose as these kids tend to do, right? And he's not the only doped-up cyclist from the 90s to go into the world of business management. Remember the Finnish guinea pig, Joona Laukka? That nice cyclist who appeared out of nowhere in the Festina team, destroying the peloton with a huge load of EPO, growth hormones, testosterone and blood transfusions. Undoubtedly he left us some hilarious moments in the 1997 Tour de France, but then gradually abandoned the sport by enrolling in Portuguese and French second-tier teams and retiring at the age of 30 with only the 2 national championships of his country in 1996 as professional victories. A true monster who, at the same time, was a polyglot, taking advantage of his doping-filled travels to learn 5 languages and become a businessman and one of the biggest hypocrites in world sport. By 2003, a year after retiring, he had a job as a marketing director for Polar watches, which are not as prestigious as Festina watches, but helped people to know their heart rates. But at the same time, he was getting into those dirty sewers of the UCI by being a member of the board of the Cyclists Union chaired by Old Man Bugno. And at the same time, he was one of the guys who designed the UCI cycling calendar, taking this noble sport to countries as generous with their population as Qatar, Oman, or the United Arab Emirates. All these contacts helped him to join the first cycling agent in France, Michel Gros, in the LC Management Agency, moving contracts and taking commissions, especially from the riders on French teams. Riders like the mythical doper Christophe Moreau or the worst runner-up in the history of the Tour de France, Jean-Christophe Perrault. And then recently, riders as well-known as Alexander Kristoff, Valentin Madouas or Romain Bardet. Of course, Laukka quickly joined in 2014 the famous movement for credible cycling of Roger Leger, the popular doped cyclist and director of doped cyclists who now advocates cleanliness and credibility. And who better than our beloved Finnish guinea pig to represent what clean cycling has been in the history of the sport? Well, it was either him or it was Lance. But of course, Joona knows 5 languages. Now, someone who knew only 2, but they opened many doors for him, was the mythical Yevgueni Berzin, son of the Soviet Union. This talented rider left the cold motherland to go to sunny Italy, to dope like a stiff-eared rabbit in Michele Ferrari's stable, and with excellent results. Thanks to a hematocrit above 60%, Berzin had a dream season in 1994, winning Liège and being part of that absurd Flèche Wallonne hat-trick, helping Giorgio Furlan to win Milan Sanremo, and especially winning the Giro d'Italia in an overwhelming way over 2 legendary racehorses like Marco Pantani and Miguel Indurain. However, Berzin was looking for maternal affection, and at the end of 1994 he left his girlfriend, who had accompanied him in his Italian wanderings, to move in with a female manager of the pasta and sauces company Barilla, a female 15 years older than the Gewis Balan cyclist and who was in love with the blonde hair of that Russian bum. Things that the bald Bjarne Riis could not understand, and that generated a terrible envy towards Berzin himself. And then the Giro champion's performances began to deteriorate. He was focusing more on family life and sleeping on the bills that his new wife gave him than being worried about the road. And so much so that even before retiring, the mature wife bought a place for Berzin to fulfill his real dream, selling used cars in the popular Berzin Auto Company in the small town of 600 inhabitants, Bosnasco in the province of Pavia. 26 years later, that doped-up Russian is still selling used cars, with a physique befitting his job, guaranteeing you won't have any drugs in the trunk if you pay for the car on the spot. But we couldn't leave without talking about a Romanian cyclist, Alexandra Ianculescu, 32, who, after being an Olympic skater at the Winter Olympics, moved to professional cycling with the modest Dutch team NWVG+. But she didn't earn enough money to pay for her dream to participate in the road cycling event at the Paris 2024 Olympic Games, perhaps the most auspicious competition of the season, and one of the women's events that historically has had the most impact. Ianculescu instead has looked to an alternative route of financing, and has opened an account only for the very, very, very keenest fans on Blue YouTube. And thanks to the money that the fans have given her, she's already been able to train in Girona, the place where dopers like Lance Armstrong or David Millar developed much of their professional careers. Every day she records more videos to get ever closer to her dream. Now, I know you're going to run right now to admire her work for at least 10 sad minutes, but please, subscribe to our channel first, eh?